All right. What's that, Auden? Auden?
Oh, nothing. Sorry, my dad was talking.
Oh, okay. Well, he didn't sign up for this class, so he needs to leave. Um, First things first. How is everyone? Any concerns? Any good things? Things are going well. Things are not going not so well. Just kind of checking in.
It's Lily's birthday.
Lily, it's your birthday?
Thank you, Auden.
Happy birthday, Lily.
You're so welcome.
Are you 19, 20,
Yes.
25?
Thank God. If I was 20, I'd be having a heart attack.
Same. I'm not looking forward to my next decade, whatever that might be. Well, good for you. Happy birthday. I hope you enjoyed today. Go out and find something to do. You can do it. Well, right on. I was saying right before this, for those of you who just joined in, we only have like 2.5 weeks left, which sounds really intimidating, but I promise it's not. We're going to get through all this. You all are doing really great work from what I've already seen. I'm working as fast as I can to try to leave comments on these things. It's difficult because I don't know, for some reason when I'm grading with like a pen and paper, I can get comments down as fast as possible. But when it comes to putting them into a Word document or adding them in through Canvas, it takes me like twice as long. So bear with me. That's why we do these workshops during class time. So that way you can see what other students have done and you can either model their behavior or you can see like, oh, they could have done that better. I also could have done that better. Let me see how I can follow their advice or follow their lead and improve my paper as best I can. Stylistically, a lot of you have come a long way in terms of style. Keep that up. Keep looking at character action. Keep looking at nice, clear sentences that aren't confusing or overly wordy. I think a lot of you have done really well with that because when you're writing faster, when you're trying to get these couple pages out in the matter of a couple days, you tend not to think as much about how to word things. And that can be a bad thing if you're just like not thinking at all and just putting down whatever, but it can also be a good thing insofar as like you're not overthinking how to say something and you're saying it in the simplest way possible. So keep that up. I'll be commenting more of that stuff for your conference drafts, but for right now I'm more concerned with basic structural things. How are you incorporating quotes? How are you structuring your papers and everything? So that's mainly what we're going to focus on today. Before we get into that, has everyone either signed up for a conference time or is everyone either preparing to sign up for a conference?
I still need to do that.
Okay.
I'm working on it, preparing.
No problem. Yeah, sign up for whenever you can. And as I said, I think on Monday, if there's no time that works for you because of either other classes or other things, whatever, you can still contact me and we can set up a different appointment time to meet and talk. I would rather not meet over the weekend, but I absolutely can if you need me to. So if you're just really slammed, but there's lots of stuff you're doing for finals and everything, preparing, shoot me an email and we can work something out where we can meet through Zoom for like 20 minutes. 5 o'clock in the evening, 5 in the morning. I'd rather not be 5 in the morning, but if it needs to be, I can do it. So just keep that in mind as you're scheduling. I don't want you to feel like this is something that should stress you out. This should be something that helps you. This should be something that ultimately makes you feel more confident about your paper going into the final couple weeks of class. I have not yet posted the instructions for the oral presentation. I will do that today as soon as we log off of here. But basically, it's what I've said in class last week. You can either work on your own or with another person in your group if you want to, but you'll be presenting on an image within your topic cluster and presenting basically like how you analyze an image, how you interpret that image, bringing the research that you've done into your understanding of that image, whether that be, graffiti, alcohol, food, politics, whatever it might be. Even if two of you, let's say 2 people worked on alcohol and one person did gender and one person did age differences, I don't know. You can work together and kind of combine your analyses to see like how gender and age differences maybe play together. If you want to work on your own, obviously that's up to you. You can pre-record your presentation if you want to. Just make sure that you have some kind of visual. So you'd have to either record yourself either on your phone or on your laptop, whatever is easiest for you to do. If you want to present it live, just face-to-face like this, you absolutely can. But what I don't want you doing is just like reading off a paper. I want you to talk very casually as though we're having a conversation, saying, hey, this is my image. This is what it's about. Here's some stuff. And here's how I'm going to analyze it and show you what it's all about. I don't want this to be like a super, how can I put this? I don't want you to talk like you write. I want you to talk like you would talk to just an average person trying to explain this kind of stuff to them. So don't try to make it overly fancy, but do try to make it intelligent, make it very analytical. I also would like for you to use an image that was not in your paper. Now, I know for a lot of you found other images in the course of your research. This shouldn't be an issue. You can either use an image from your group image board that you created what seems like 500 years ago. You can use an image from there, or you can use another image that you found while you were figuring out what you wanted to analyze for your own papers. Anything like that is totally fine. I would just rather it not be an image from your research paper, so that way you're doing at least something a little new. And that's partly because university curriculum standards want you to try to do something new with an oral presentation, not just repeat what you've done before. So I think this is the easiest way to do it, is for you to basically take the research you've done, but just apply it to a slightly different image that you maybe haven't written about just yet. I'll post those instructions later on today so that we can look at it more thoroughly. All the requirements will be on there. It shouldn't be longer than 5 minutes, maybe 7 or 8 if you're presenting with someone else in your group. But this should be a pretty relatively relaxed, relatively easy assignment. Do anyone have any concerns or questions about the presentation, either how to record it or what to do?
When is it due? When's the presentation due?
So your papers are due May 1st, and then we're going to split the presentation between May 1st and May 4th. So those 2 days, I'll likely set up a sign-up sheet to see who wants to go when, because I don't want to call people randomly, because I understand that some people have different schedules and maybe they couldn't get around to finishing their oral presentation that week or whatever. But if we could have 7 go on Friday, that May 1st, and then 7 go on Monday, that May 4th, May 4th, that'd be ideal for me. And I'll have that kind of scheduling set up soon, just so that way you all can do that. And again, it shouldn't take you super long to do. If you finish your presentation, if you finish your paper, the presentation shouldn't take you more than maybe a half an hour to put together. But yeah, we've got to have that in before the end of the semester. Our last 2 class periods will just be you all presenting your presentations here through Zoom, either in a recorded format where you send me a YouTube link or whatever, and I show it on my screen so that way everyone can see it, or you show it on your screen, or you present it live, whatever is more comfortable for you. So that's something you want to get working on over this weekend or next weekend. You absolutely can. And I will, because I'll have those instructions up and running for you. You can get it out the way if you want to, and that way you don't need to think about it while you're working on your final steps for your research paper. And if you have any questions too, if you aren't able to find any other images, or you're not happy with the images you found, contact me. I can help you out with that. But it should be something kind of new and kind of interesting too. And I'm confident that all of you will find something really good. Right on. So let's dive into what I want to talk about today. And what I want to talk about today is something called global coherence. We've talked about before coherence in terms of sentence structure and paragraph structure, where everything from beginning to end of the sentence makes sense and ties together. And then paragraph structure, where everything ties together and makes sense, and there's a clear movement from point A to point Z. That's where we get into old new information, where you're saying, oh, because we know that the media tends to emphasize bad behavior in an emergency, we can also see in this situation, blah, blah, blah. So you're setting up your paragraph and your information by starting with information that the reader already knows, or that you can share with them that would be easy to understand, and then getting into more complicated or newer information that they maybe aren't familiar with yet. And that's how you kind of have a good setup that your reader can follow, but also it ties together really well, because you can see the different steps that you've taken from one point to the next point to the next point. When I say global coherence, though, what do you think I mean? If I look at this paper, I'm like, oh, this paper is globally coherent. All those answers were wrong. Global coherence actually refers to the entire coherence of the paper itself. So not only how each individual thought ties together, but how each of the paragraphs fit together logically in the same paper, and whether or not they all, oh, hey, Jack, whether or not all these paragraphs tie together in a way the reader can follow. Because one thing I noticed while looking over some of your drafts before coming into class today is you have really interesting paragraphs, and they flow pretty well, but they all clearly focus on one particular topic, or they all are looking at one particular image. But what I noticed was it's not clear how those paragraphs flow into one another. So for example, someone might introduce an image saying, oh, I'm analyzing this ad from this company. It's like, cool, well, I need some kind of introduction as to like, who this company is or when was this ad published. Like I need a little bit more information because you can't just throw me right into there. Same thing if they switch from, I'm talking about this ad for Sky Vodka, and now I'm moving into a different ad for Evan Williams. Well, it's okay, well, why are you looking at a vodka ad and a whiskey ad? And these are just examples that I'm pulling from. They're not necessarily real examples, but you need to explain why you've moved from one brand of liquor to another brand of liquor, or why you're moving from one kind of political cartoon to another, or anything like that, so that the reader can follow your line of thinking. It might be really obvious to you. It might be really obvious to me. But if someone else were to come in and start reading this paper, if they can't follow what your logic is, then that's where the problem lies. And unfortunately, just because I know what you're writing and I know what your logical processes are, not every instructor that you have from here until the end of time is going to know that. So I want to talk a little bit about today is global coherence, how it looks, how it can be improved, how it can be better. And the best way for you to kind of get a handle on this is, we probably read this a little bit earlier in the semester, but I want to kind of remind you of it again. Lesson 7 in style is all on global coherence, and I recognize that it's backwards on my screen, but that's okay. And it gives you a lot of different hints and tips as to how to make sure that all of your paragraphs and all of your thoughts tie together well. It talks about different kinds of structures for your paper. And I'm recording this right now just so you can see it later when I post it. There's 3 types. There's chronological, which is, of course, going in order from, oldest to newest. And some of you are doing that, and I noticed that, and that's actually great because it works well for your papers. In fact, one of the examples I'm going to pull up, I think, is Jackie's, where she's showing the history of graffiti in a short period of time from like the 80s to now. So it makes sense for her to go chronologically to see how these different ideas and thoughts have developed over the past couple decades. That works great. It obviously does not work quite as well if you're writing about 2 different alcohol ads released in the last couple of years, because there's no reason to really examine them one before the other, because there's no real logic to why one became before the other, unless you're looking at a comparison of how a company marketed their product in the 90s compared to how they market it now. That's a different matter, but if it's from the same general time period, it doesn't make sense to do it chronologically. What would make sense in that case, though, would be a coordinating structure. And coordinating basically means that you have different sections of your paper that relate to different, how can I put this? Different examples or different topics. So for example, if you're looking at, I'll use this example again. You're looking at Sky Vodka and Evan Williams whiskey. You've got one part of your paper that focuses on Sky Vodka, and then you transition into your section of paper about Evan Williams, and then your conclusion, you kind of tie that all together again. So that's coordinating. That's where you're basically taking 2 related but still slightly different examples and analyzing them on their own, and then at the end kind of bring them together and be like, okay, well, here's how they all connect together. This works for alcohol ads, like I mentioned, in the same time period. It can also work for political cartoons if you're talking about events that occur around the same time and saying, this political cartoon of Hillary Clinton appeared the same time as this political cartoon for Sarah Palin. I'm going to analyze them separately, and then at the end I'm going to look at how our knowledge of these cartoons grows when we compare them to one another. So that's coordinate. It's not the same as chronological. You're not going in any kind of specific order. It doesn't really matter which order you put which topic in, because you're ultimately going to analyze them on the same level playing field towards the end anyway. But you need to decide which one you're going to go with first and how you're going to separate them. And the last one, and probably the most complicated, is a logical progression. It's a really complicated order because basically for a logical progression, you're either going to move from something like a generalization saying all food delivery apps are bad, and then moving into certain examples and then moving back out again to explain like, okay, based on these examples, we can assume blah, blah, blah. You can go off of premise and conclusion saying, if this is true, then this must also be true. Or if this happens, we can logically assume that this thing will follow afterwards. And you'd set up your paper like that. It's a really complex way of doing things, but I've also seen some of you already working on doing your paper that way, and it's working really well for you. Logical order makes sense when you know how it makes sense, when it makes sense to you. So if you're not quite sure how to do a logical progression, if you're more comfortable doing a chronological or a coordinate progression, please do that. Don't try to tackle logical if you have no idea where to begin or end. But if you've already started kind of writing a logically kind of complex paper and you know how you're moving from one premise to another, stick with it, because from what I can see so far, it's working pretty decently for you. The other tips that I can give you on global coherence are, where was it? You're going to want to look for key themes. And this applies for both paragraphs and the paper as a whole. So for example, if you start talking about, how Democrats feel about food stamps or feel about welfare programs, and then at the end you're talking about Republicans in that same paragraph, those don't quite fit together unless you're trying to transition into another paragraph about Republicans, for example. A globally coherent paper, you're maybe talking about Republicans and Democrats and about welfare systems and stuff. But then if you start talking about, let's say, like immigration in the middle of your paper, it's not clear how that issue ties back into these overall topics of Democrats, Republicans, Social Security. And either you need to find a way to make that topic fit, or you just need to cut it out entirely. I haven't seen anything that glaring yet on the level of like the entire paper, but I do think it's something you should focus on, especially for your smaller paragraphs, because I have seen people where they'll start on one step and they'll end a little bit off course. Not super far off course, it just requires a little bit of correction, but I noticed that where they ended isn't quite where they began not in terms of logic, but in terms of their topic. So go through your paper. It helps sometimes if you can circle what the main themes are in your essay as a whole or in individual paragraphs, and you can see where you start losing track of your topic or where you start introducing ideas that you really don't quite fit together. Or what you'll realize is, oh, I don't have any themes at all. I need to actually figure out what my paper is about. So that can work really well for you. The end of lesson 7 for style has a couple of ideas as to how you can revise as you go. So you can see like, oh, I start here but end here. That's a mistake. How can I fix that? The style lesson tells you how to go about improving that issue or fixing that issue right there. So that's that right there. That's that style lesson. I encourage you all to read it or at least kind of skim through it as you work on your papers, because the longer the paper gets, the more challenging it becomes to make it sure it coheres as an entire paper. Really easy for 3 or 4 page papers. You're not adding a whole lot in there. Once you start expanding to 7 to 10 pages, it gets a little bit more complicated. So you're doing it well right now, I've noticed, because you've only written like 3 or 5 pages. But as you get into that 6th, 7th, and 8th page, if you're going that far, keep in mind that you need to make sure that it all ties together. And make sure that you have transition sentences or transition sections where it's clear to your reader why you're moving from one paragraph to another. Any general questions about making sure the paper as a whole is coherent and everything kind of fits together? It's one of the more complicated, more kind of challenging topics that we'll be covering this semester. And it's a shame that we don't have a more kind of like hands-on approach other than Zoom, but we're going to work the best we can with what we have. So I figured the best way to show you how it's done or to show you how you can improve on certain issues of coherence is look at some examples. I chose these 2 examples completely randomly. I didn't want to choose Ryan's or who else did we talk about last time? I didn't want to choose Ryan or Auden's again because we talked about them last time. I want to make sure that we kind of mix it up some. So let me share my screen. I actually want to save Jackie's for later. Okay, so this is, I believe, Maddie's paper on HelloFresh. And again, I chose this one. I chose Jackie's paper as well. Completely randomly, I just want to kind of see how they were doing in terms of global coherence. I've already looked over their first couple of paragraphs just because that you've already gotten started on that. And they seem to fit together pretty well. So Maddie has her introduction here. She introduces a thesis statement towards the end, basically that HelloFresh as a food delivery service is a good thing, and they're changing consumption culture for the better, and here's how they're doing that. And then, Maddie, talk me through what are you doing here in your first body paragraph? So the topic sentence here is, with the ability to have ready-to-cook meals sent directly to your home, people no longer need to go out and grocery shop or pick up takeout for dinner. What were you doing with this first body paragraph?
This one I was kind of talking about like the aspect of convenience, the transition of doing things like from your home instead of going out to eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely emphasizing convenience. It's emphasizing why that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I like that you approach that towards the end, where you bring in this topic saying, oh, by 2030, most meals currently cooked at home are instead ordered online, delivered from either restaurants or central kitchens. And Sheng seems to think this is a bad thing. And you're saying, well, actually, like, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. This might be a good thing. This might be a way for people to, again, like interact with one another and cook without having to feel like it's a really challenging or daunting task. So why did you choose to talk about this topic first? Why choose to start with convenience? Just out of curiosity. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer.
I think it's like the main thing that people think about when they like want to order like delivery to their house. It's like, oh, like I don't want to drive, or I don't want to go and like waste time like sitting down in a restaurant. So I feel like that's like the most common reason why people get like food delivery, like even if it's like Postmates or Uber Eats or something like that.
Mm-hmm. How do others feel about that? This idea that in terms of like convenience, that's the thing that most people can relate to when thinking about like food delivery apps.
I agree with that statement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the reason why we shift to using technology more is because of how convenient it is, and we don't necessarily have to get up and go out, especially during a time like this when it's dangerous to really go out.
I agree with that. I think that's absolutely right. I think convenience is probably the thing that people can most easily understand. Because even before we had all these food delivery apps, you know, the easiest thing to have delivered if you didn't really like cooking was like catering or ordering pizza. So I think for a lot of people, they understand the desire to want to order out, or the desire to want to order delivery. It's a lot more convenient. And as Bella said, it's a lot safer now. So I think this is the first thing that people can really relate to. So it's smart of Maddie to begin this way, explaining, hey, it's more convenient and we all seem to know why, but let me just kind of like spell it out for you. And here's why it's convenient. Here's why it's a good thing. Here's why people who say it's a bad thing aren't totally right. She's not saying Sheng is wrong, but she is saying meal prep kits still allow the effect of a home-cooked meal. So she's like, oh, yeah, Postmates and Uber Eats, that might be its own issue. But when it comes to cooking meals at home, meal prep kits like HelloFresh actually are still a good thing. It's not diminishing the how great it is to cook at home, to cook a kind of a home-cooked meal on your own. So then we're not going to look at the individual kind of like paragraph level, but I'm assuming that this is all more or less coherent. And then she moves into, well, in the past, eating could be considered a social activity, for example. Well, let me look at the last sentence of her previous paragraph first. So, meal prep kits like HelloFresh are the perfect alternative as they are healthy, delivered to the door, and quick, and generally quick and easy to prepare. Then she moves into, well, in the past, eating could be considered a social activity, for example, going out to dinner with family and friends. The ability to have food delivered to the home allows people to eat comfortably in privacy. So how are we moving from the first point to the next? Is the logic of that transition clear to us? And this is for anyone to answer. Either Maddie can answer or someone else can answer. So for me, looking at this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It like doesn't really go together.
It doesn't quite. Like, I know what you're going with, because this is almost like you're doing kind of the coordinating thing where you introduce your topics in your thesis statement saying, hey, I'm going to talk about convenience. I'm going to talk about this and that. And you move from convenience to the next one. So I know, looking back at your thesis statement, like, okay, she's talking about this topic. Now she's moving on this topic. But it could be, you're right, it could be a little clear what the transition is there. It doesn't have to be anything huge either. You could say in the beginning of your, in this sense right here, saying something along the lines of, in addition to being convenient, the ability to have food delivered to your home allows people to eat comfortably in privacy. Something along those lines, where you don't need to change a whole lot, but just adding a little phrase explaining how you're moving from here to here, saying, you know, they're convenient and people also like it because of this reason as well. That just kind of helps your reader kind of follow along, saying like, okay, we finished with this topic and now we're moving on to this one here. Again, so it doesn't require a whole lot. It just requires maybe a phrase, maybe, and you can do it sometimes at the end of the previous paragraph or beginning of the second paragraph, but there should be something there just kind of indicate to your reader, okay, we've talked about this point, now we're moving on to this point here. But in terms of coordinating, in terms of having separate topics, it makes sense there. It just could be, the link could be a little bit stronger. So then she moves into talking about the ability to have food delivered home allows people to eat comfortably in privacy. For many, eating in public is very different compared to eating in private, and both food choice and intake are affected due to social norms about eating. In social norms and their influence on eating behaviors, Higgs explains that we model the eating choices of our dining partners in consumer amounts similar to what they eat. Sometimes the presence of other diners may augment consumption compared with eating alone, and other times eating may be inhibited, even in the face of deprivation-induced hunger. And then she kind of boils it down in language we can understand. When dining out with friends, the common question that everyone seems to ask is, what are you getting? Generally, 4 out of 5 people are ordering a salad. The 5th person will also order a salad, and the same trend follows suit with unhealthy choices. Rather than ordering solely based on personal taste and desires, oftentimes people allow those around them to change their decisions for a variety of reasons, like fear of judgment or sticking out from the group. What I like about this section, and I'll talk about this real fast, is she gives this quote from her source, this article about social norms and eating behaviors, and she gives that quote, and then as though to say, okay, like if you didn't understand what that quote was saying, I'm going to lay it out to you in really simple to understand terms. So this quote is important to her because we need to understand that she's not just pulling this idea out of nowhere. Then she puts it in her own words so that we can all kind of understand through the case of an example, like what she's saying. And this is true. Like the example I was thinking of when I first read this was, I go out to eat with friends and they'll say like, oh, if I order fries, will you eat some? As though to say like, well, if you're not going to eat some, I'm not going to order any because I don't want to be the only one to be eating this unhealthy thing on my own. When in actuality, she'd be like, okay, well, who cares if you're eating fries by yourself or with others? But she's right. If most people at a table are ordering healthier meals or ordering salads, that other person might feel compelled to do that as well so that they don't kind of stand out. I think it's really smart. So tell me now, why did you move from convenience to this issue of either like privacy or this issue of like social norms? What are you doing here with this paragraph, Maddie?
Because like I think when people think of like eating at home, they think like it's not the same as like going on Publix or either like you're eating with like your like family or like even just by yourself. So like just talking about like the impacts that has.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you want to talk about like, hey, like the two things are different. Like eating at home, even with your friends, and eating out with your friends are still two very different experiences. Like if you're at home and you order in, it's much more relaxed, it's much more casual. You can wear sweatpants, talk about whatever, not have to worry about being too loud. And I like that you move from this topic of convenience that's fairly easy for people to understand and to accept to this topic of social norms, because most people might say, not even most people, some might say, oh, well, if someone else at the table orders a salad, I don't care, I'm going to order whatever I want. And you're bringing in studies saying, like, actually, it's not totally true. It seems to be that we tend to eat like those around us when others are making the decisions. So I think this can be a harder idea for people to swallow. And I think you laid out really well in terms of, hey, convenience is important, but also maybe privacy or maybe not feeling judged by others is really important too. And here's why. Going through. So using a meal kit eliminates much of the stress surrounding food consumption habits, as the consumer doesn't need to stress about what they will order at a restaurant, the judgment of others, what kind of groceries to buy, or how much to eat. HelloFresh provides healthy meals in appropriate portions for people to eat in the comfort of their home. So just kind of tying it all together at the end, you get into, okay, like here's what I basically just said in my paragraph. Here's why it's a good thing. And here's how people can, eat at home or eat healthier without feeling judged or without feeling tempted. Like if you had to eat with friends and they're all getting unhealthy meals and you were trying to eat healthier or maybe go on a diet, that may be stressful for you to be ordering a salad while everyone else is getting a burger and fries. So here you're basically emphasizing like, hey, like this gets rid of some of that pressure by allowing you to eat healthy and eliminates the fear of being judged by others or not knowing what to buy, etc. And then next paragraph, HelloFresh is unique from many other delivery services in that they provide the ingredients that the consumer still has to cook and prepare the meals themselves. Now, how does the end of the previous paragraph tie into the beginning of this next paragraph? And anyone can kind of speak up. I will say, I think the connection here is stronger than in the previous transition.
Yeah, because it goes from, they talk about providing the meals, and then it goes to talking about delivery services, and it uses the word provide again, so it shows that they're still providing food. And then, but it like kind of adds that like twist in the second like part of the sentence, which is like what they're going to talk about for the paragraph.
Yeah, I agree, because she didn't really talk a whole lot in this paragraph about like what kinds of groceries to buy, but it's understood from the purpose of HelloFresh. HelloFresh or other meal prep kits are an ideal solution to the problem. Using a meal kit eliminates much of the stress surrounding food consumption habits, as a consumer doesn't need to stress about what they will order at a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, she talks briefly about, hey, like this is good because now you don't need to worry about what others are thinking about you. You don't need to worry about what you have to eat because it's provided for you in terms of what the ingredients are. And here she's like, okay, now I'm going to get more into the question of ingredients. And it's unique from many other delivery services that they provide ingredients that the consumer has to also prep and has to also cook and prepare the meal themselves. So it's a clear connection because we know that, we've talked about like how important it is to eliminate this kind of judgment from others and how difficult it can be to get the ingredients if you feel pressured from others to get certain other ingredients or to eat certain other things. And now we're going to elaborate on this concept of, okay, because HelloFresh provides the ingredients, here's what happens. Here's why it's a good thing. And she gets into grocery shopping can be difficult, especially for those who lack self-control and given easily to dietary cravings. Boom. So it's much stronger here because now we understand how we're moving from this kind of general idea of, okay, meal prep kits help eliminate certain judgment from others and certain stress, to the ingredients specifically help eliminate the stress of having to go to the grocery store and not know what to buy. Because I've done this before personally, where you go and something to buy a bunch of healthy things, and you might do so, but then you see that like Oreos are on sale and you buy some Oreos, or you see that like sodas are on sale for like 2 for $8, you buy sodas. So it can be a lot more difficult if you don't have like a strict list as to what you're getting, and you can feel like you're giving into cravings, especially if you shop on an empty stomach, which I tend to do way too often. So yeah, I think the connection here is much clearer. So I'm not gonna go too much further with Maddie's paper, but this was just to kind of show, I went into this not knowing how she was connecting her paragraphs, to see how we can go about connecting your paragraphs one to the other and transition from one to the next. And if there is a point in your paper where you have to switch from one topic to a completely different one, you can end the previous paragraph saying, I'll return to this topic of grocery delivery services later in the paper, but first we need to discuss blah, 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 whatever it might be. So just kind of put up what I call signposts to your readers, so that way if they're reading this really fast, which I am because I have to grade them really quickly, they can easily follow where we're going from one point to the next. I think Maddie, without even knowing it, did kind of like a logical progression here, because she went from this kind of general idea of, social pressures to this more specific idea about like, social pressures when it comes to buying certain ingredients and stuff too. And there's her image. Oh, I did want to talk about this real fast, just because I think Nicole asked me about this the other day. So whenever you're putting your images in for your figures, you're basically going to do what Maddie did here. You're going to put the image in. I would prefer if you wrap your text around the image, because that'll buy you more space. And sometimes I've seen students where they will have an ad take up 3/4 of the page, and that way they don't need to write 3/4 of a page. And I know what you're doing there. But have it be definitely no more than half a page. Label it figure 1. But then what you're going to do is do it like you did for your first paper with your ads you analyzed there, and put the citation directly underneath the image. And then you don't need to include that citation in your works cited page. So just kind of like you did for the first paper, so let's say Maddie took this off of HelloFresh's website. She might say promotional ad for HelloFresh, and then give the full citation next to the figure. And then she doesn't need to include that with her works cited page. So that's how I would like for you to do this for your own images in your paper. Please include at least one image in your paper, especially if it's one that you're talking about really in depth. And if you feel the need to include two, but don't include two to the point where it takes up a significant portion of the paper. You should still be writing about 7 pages of actual text. So keep that in mind. I'm happy to help you with that if you want to. But basically, do what Maddie did here. Just include that citation at the bottom right there, right after figure 1. Any questions about citing images or including images in your paper? If you're working with commercials or political ads, you can use screenshots from either YouTube videos or wherever, and you do that the same way. You just say, screenshot of Ronald Reagan political ad, and then you give the YouTube citation or whatever it might be. Just that way that they know that this isn't like a still image. This is taken from a longer video, because I know some of you are working with videos as well. Cool. So that was Maddie's, and now I think I also have to. Oh, now it's telling me that screen sharing has stopped. Great. Now I want to look at Jackie's. And again, I'm kind of flying this blind. I didn't look over this a whole lot before we came in here today. I just kind of want to see like how she's tying her paragraphs together. So her intro, she gives her thesis statement, I'm assuming. She does. And then she gets into her first body paragraph. Actually, before I did notice this before I get too far. So she has this first body paragraph, and then at the end here, she does what I do, which is move much of this into the next paragraph, where it's like a little note to herself explaining, hey, like, I've written this, but this really could go better somewhere else. It's totally fine if you have comments like that in your paper. In fact, I encourage it, because it could remind you, oh yeah, I realize now that I'm talking about this, but it really should be tied back into this thing here. I'm not worry about that right now, but later on when I'm revising, I need to move this around next time. So I will ask Jackie, because it seems like here you're talking about the legality of graffiti and how, even if graffiti is the most beautiful thing in the world and everyone loves it, it's still technically illegal because it's been created without permission of the property owner. It's not supposed to be there. Many cities typically view graffiti as a threat to the quality of community life, and they spend millions of dollars to remove it from public and private property. And then in your next paragraph, I noticed you start talking about 70s and 80s New York City subway cars unintentionally provided the ideal canvas for graffiti artists to create their work. So you're talking about like kind of the history of graffiti art and how it was treated in New York City. So I guess my question for you, Jackie, is why did you feel like you need to move a lot of this paragraph into this next one here?
Well, originally that, like the paragraph above the subway car paragraph was like 3 paragraphs below it. So I kind of, as I was reading it over, I just kind of moved it there. And then I think that was a note to kind of maybe transition it better.
Okay.
Or maybe somehow combine them. I don't know. I just thought it sounded weird, but I thought that paragraph needed to go there.
Okay, so what do others think? So like we say, like she starts this first body paragraph talking about like the general issue of legality and how, again, even if it is art, even if it is something that people like, because it's illegal, most cities want to get rid of it. And then she gets into what New York City did. In the 80s, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority began to enforce regulations against graffiti in the subway, causing artists to transition using walls or sides of buildings within public view. So what do others of you think? What do you think? Does this transition well from this paragraph to this paragraph? What's the connection here? What do you all think? I'll probably zoom out a little bit too so we can maybe see a little bit better. So Jackie was saying she thinks that this can transition better into this paragraph or could maybe be combined into one paragraph as a whole. I'm interested to hear what others think.
I think that it should stay as 2 different paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, whereas the first one is just giving like a general like idea of it and she's just like giving background info, like the second one was more of an example, I think. So like it's like good. I don't know. I think it's good to separate them. Okay, so Paulina's saying like, oh, they should be separate because one's talking about this kind of like general idea, and the second paragraph gets more into like a specific example. What do others think? Do people agree with Paulina? Do people disagree with her? I'm not going to tell you what I think yet. Jackie, what do you think? What's your response to Paulina?
I don't know yet because I feel like, well, part of it was because also I feel like that top paragraph is kind of repetitive of my intro paragraph. Mm-hmm. So maybe I was kind of thinking of kind of working both ideas into one paragraph rather than like working those 2 paragraphs together. If that makes sense.
I think I see what you're saying. I think, I'll be totally honest, I think it can go either way. I think what Paulina said is right. Like if you want to just kind of like lay out because I think whereas in your introduction, you talk generally about the legality and how some like it, some don't like it. I don't think you're necessarily repeating yourself entirely in this next paragraph. And you do kind of get more into why graffiti is considered illegal. And even if it were illegal, why certain communities don't seem to like it. So I think that if you want to keep these as 2 separate paragraphs, you could. You just need to transition to this next paragraph saying, this animosity towards graffiti was shown throughout the 1970s and 80s in blah, 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 or something like that, just so that way it's clear to the reader why you're moving from this kind of like general topic of why communities or cities don't like graffiti into why you're talking about like New York City specifically and why you're moving into this example. On the other hand, if you wanted to make it one complete paragraph, you just need to make it clear in your topic sentence what the full topic of this paragraph is, which for you, I'm assuming is cities don't like graffiti because it gives off the impression that they are dirty, that they are not as nice or not as accepting or welcoming as they could be. And then you use New York City as kind of like your example you're going to analyze. Because as graffiti appeared in cities throughout the rest of the United States and Europe, it became recognized as a growing urban problem because it was perceived as not art, but as a public nuisance. I think it can go either way. If you want to keep it separate, you absolutely can. Again, if you do keep it separate, just kind of make sure that the transition in between is very clear. Because I do think that down here it's clear, because you talk about the 70s and 80s, and then you get into the political situation in the 80s, including the AIDS crisis and war on drugs, campaign of the Reagan presidency, encouraged many street artists to use their art to address prominent political and social topics. So now you're kind of moving from, graffiti as a nuisance in the 80s to like, oh wait, the 80s were also a time period when people were using graffiti as like political activism. So I think the connection here is quite clear, but I think if you keep these separate, the connection there needs to be a little bit clearer. And if you combine it into one paragraph, that's also great, but then you need to kind of like not rewrite the paragraph, but restructure or rework how you are organizing that particular paragraph. So I don't think there's one correct answer. I think there's a number of ways you can go with this, but I think ultimately it ties down to, I know why these paragraphs are here, and it makes sense to me why they're there. I think it's just a matter of making sure it's clear to the reader how you're moving from one step to the next. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I like the order. I like going from this general to this specific, and then into this kind of, because you notice there's like a change where you're saying like, hey, like, people thought that it was a nuisance, it was bad, but then in the 80s during the AIDS crisis and war on drugs, this stuff started happening instead. You talk about Keith Haring, who I think is great. Tragic life, but really great artwork. But yeah, so you move from that previous one to that next one. So the trajectory for me is pretty clear. It just could be a little bit clearer here, and it could be clear as to why you're moving from this section to the next section, if you choose to keep it separate. Just kind of going through. So we talk about this one here. You talk about the AIDS crisis, and you're using Keith Haring. Everyone know who Keith Haring is? You would know his works if you saw it, because they've kind of become like super iconic. I'm just gonna do this real fast. No. Not what I wanted. Just gonna throw this in here. So that's Keith Haring's artwork. Relatively iconic. A lot of people have seen it before. That's who she's talking when she talks about him there. So talking about that, and then moving into, moreover, as graffiti slowly began to attract more attention from the media and celebrities, public response to it altered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, moving into Banksy. If anything, I think you can maybe combine these two paragraphs if you wanted to. This kind of like, we talk about the 70s and 80s in New York, and then move into talking about how it transitioned from being this nuisance to being this more positive activist kind of thing. Again, just making sure it's clear in your topic sentence, like where you're going with this particular paragraph. But I think if you wanted to, you combine these two paragraphs pretty easily, because I think the transition is clear from talking about why this was viewed as a bad thing, why people started to act out against it, and it's like, okay, well, because the political situation also became a lot more fraught in the 80s, graffiti began to become this way of kind of like raising awareness and kind of reacting against certain authority figures. So I don't know, it's up to you. You can keep these all separate, you can combine them where you want to, because I think the general movement from one point to the next is good and is correct. It's just a matter of how you specifically think you want to make those links look. Which I know can be like a kind of like complicated thing to explain. And this is a more kind of like lower order stuff where the writing's good, the ideas are good, the examples are good, but now it's a question of like, okay, well, how can we push it to the next level and make sure it all ties together as neatly as possible? And you'll see this more as you keep writing, as you keep working. And I'm not going to say that if you create those stronger links right now that they won't change later on. But I think both examples we looked at today, Maddie's and Jackie's, while they might have their issues, are both doing pretty good work. And they're both trying to show where, for Jackie's here, we're seeing like a chronological kind of movement from, the 80s to the 90s, and then she's going to start talking about the Banksy. And for Maddie, it was more coordinating. But I think we're seeing how the links between the different points that both are making could be a little bit stronger in places, and where they're working well, and where they're not working as well, they can easily be improved by adding just like a phrase or a sentence or two here or there. So good job, both of you. I will try to take a look at the rest of those later on today. If you haven't submitted your 5 pages yet, don't worry about it. I know it's kind of a quick turnaround. I really do encourage you to have a 7-page draft finished by the end of the week, regardless of whether or not it's really good or really crappy. I don't care. But I think it'll be easier for you in the long run if you have something down that you can revise and improve on instead of not having anything at all. Because if you have only written 5 pages and everyone else has written 7, by the following week, when everyone's kind of revised and improved their 7 pages, you're still trying to finish your original 7 pages and revise your first 5 pages. And it ends up being a lot more work. So if you haven't submitted your 5 pages, again, as I said before, I'm not taking off points for lateness because I know we all have different things going on. But I do highly encourage you by the end of the week to have some kind of full draft. It can even be a draft where you say, I really want to work with this on this paragraph right here. I'm not quite sure how I want to order it yet, but I know I want to talk about this, this, this. Or, like if you saw like how Jackie did, leave a comment for yourself saying, I'm not happy with how these 2 paragraphs fit together right now, but I need to move on to the next thing and I'll come back to it later. That's totally fine. Don't spend your entire next 48 hours focusing on 1 or 2 pages. Get down what you can get down, focus on what you can focus on and get out the way. And then you can always go back to it and revise it and improve upon it later. More important to have kind of like a finished product right now than to have a perfect product, because you're never going to have a perfect first draft. The idea is just to have something that you can improve on over the weekend so that way you're not stressing yourself out about, oh, wait, no, I only have 5 pages. I need to write more from there. Any questions, concerns, comments?
When's the final draft due?
The final draft is due. So conferences start next Friday. So the final draft of the paper that you'll turn in for your final grade is due May 1st. So 2 weeks from this Friday.
Okay, awesome.
So the idea is that you would have your first draft finished this Friday. By next Friday, you've got your second draft, your conference draft due. And then after your conference with me, you'll just have to revise for your final draft. So it's almost as though you'll have like 3 different drafts for this particular essay if you're doing it the right way. I'll reiterate, if you haven't signed up for a conference yet, make sure you do that. If none of the times available work for you, email me. We can work something out. I'm fine with that. I don't think I have anything else. I'll post those oral presentation instructions later on today. Excuse me. Any other questions or concerns? Everyone wish Lily a happy birthday. She's 19. It's really exciting.
Happy birthday, Lily.
Oh, thank you, Alden.
Happy birthday.
All right.
Thank you.
Aw. All right, everyone. That's it for me. Take care. Enjoy your week. I'll see you all Friday.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.